Act 1. The Impossible Mission. On the 50th floor of Davenport Tower, where the clouds scraped against the windows, silence was a multi-million-dollar commodity. Mr. Harrison Davenport hated disturbances more than anything. At that moment, he was reviewing the final blueprints for the Greenhaven project, a development that, to his irritation, felt soulless. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the room. It wasn't the sharp, confident rap of his assistant, but a small, timid tap. The heavy wooden door creaked open. Standing there was an 8-year-old girl with curly hair and wide eyes, clutching an architectural portfolio nearly as big as she was. Harrison narrowed his eyes. "A child here?" He shot a displeased glance at his assistant. "Mr. Davenport, my apologies. This young lady said she had an appointment." The assistant stammered, flustered. Harrison raised a hand, silencing her. He recognized the girl. A faint but strange memory flickered in his mind. The Rose Girl. The sheer absurdity of the situation won out over his annoyance. "Let her in." Sophie walked in, her small feet seeming to get lost on the vast marble floor. She placed the heavy portfolio on his enormous desk. Harrison gestured for her to sit in the oversized leather chair opposite him, where her small feet dangled in the air, not reaching the floor. He steepled his fingers, leaning back, and began the strangest interview of his career. "Are you here alone?" he asked, his voice colder than he intended. The little girl nodded, placing the heavy portfolio on the polished desk. "I'm here for my mom, Clara," she said. "My mom said, today is the day for her dream." To understand why a little girl had to carry the weight of such a dream on her shoulders, we have to go back just a few hours, to the fateful moment that sent her on this impossible journey. 6 o'clock that morning. The alarm clock shrieked mercilessly, tearing through the fragile silence of the top-floor apartment. Clara tried to reach out to silence it, but her whole body felt like it was being crushed by an invisible weight. A fire raged behind her eyes, her throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper, and a profound exhaustion pinned her to the mattress. She knew she had a high fever. It was the result of many sleepless nights spent perfecting the portfolio for the most important interview of her life. "No, it can't be," she whispered, her voice hoarse. She looked at the calendar on the wall. Today's date was circled in a glaring red: Davenport Creations, 10 a.m. A wave of panic washed over her. She tried to sit up, but the world tilted violently. She gripped the side of the bed, stumbling to her feet. But a violent coughing fit seized her, draining her last bit of strength and sending her crumpling to the cold floor. "I'm okay, sweetie," Clara lied, trying to force a smile. Just a little tired." She glanced at the clock. 8 o'clock. Only 2 hours left. It was too late. She couldn't go in this state. Desperate, she reached for her phone, her hand trembling as she dialed the number for the HR department of Davenport Creations, a number she had memorized over the past week. "Hello, this is Clara," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I have an interview with Mr. Davenport at 10 this morning, but I've woken up with a sudden fever. Is there any possibility we could reschedule? Please, just one day." The voice on the other end was cold, professional, and devoid of any emotion. "Miss Clara, I'm afraid that's not possible. Mr. Davenport's schedule is finalized for the next 3 months. Today is the only available date for final candidates. If you cannot attend, we will have to assume you are withdrawing your application." But I've worked so hard," Clara pleaded, her voice breaking. "We wish you a swift recovery." The line went dead with a dry, final click. Clara let the phone slip from her hand onto the floor. A dead silence filled the room. And then she began to cry. Not quiet sobs, but the wrenching cries of someone who had fought to their last breath, only to be defeated right at the finish line. She cried for her cruel fate, for the dream that had just been snatched away, and for her own powerlessness to give her daughter a better future. Sophie stood in the doorway and saw it all. She saw her mother, the strongest person she knew, completely broken. She saw the thick portfolio, the thing her mother had called her dream, sitting on the table. She didn't fully understand interviews or corporations, but she understood her mother's pain. And in her young mind, a decision was made. If her mom couldn't go to the dream, then she would bring the dream to her. Once Clara had cried herself to an exhausted, medicated sleep, Sophie quietly put on her best coat, the one her mother had bought her for Christmas. She used a small chair to climb onto the table, struggling to wrap her arms around the heavy portfolio. It nearly covered her entire body. She left a small, handwritten note on the table. "Mommy, I'm going to deliver the dream for you. I love you." Then she opened the door, stepped out, and began her impossible mission. A mission that had brought her face to face with Mr. Harrison Davenport. Act 2, The Heart of the Concrete. Harrison leaned back in his expensive chair, observing the small creature sitting opposite him. She sat up straight, trying to look grown up, her feet swinging in the air. He had his assistant bring in a glass of warm milk and some cookies. "Thank you, sir," Sophie said politely, but she didn't touch them. Her focus seemed to be entirely on the portfolio on the table, like a soldier guarding a national treasure. That seriousness made Harrison drop his usual cold demeanor. He decided to begin the strangest interview of his career. "Harrison, so your name is Sophie, right? I'm Harrison. You said your mom is sick. Is she okay?" "Sophie, the doctor said she just has a fever because she's too tired. She needs to sleep. But she kept crying because she couldn't come to see you." "Harrison, and you think bringing this here will make your mom happier?" He pointed to the portfolio. Sophie, nodding firmly. "Yes. Mommy said this was her last chance. I don't know what a last chance is, but I saw her crying, so I thought it must be a very bad thing. I wanted to fix it." Harrison looked at the girl. Such a simple child's logic, yet it struck something deep inside him. He had seen grown men fall apart over missed opportunities, but he had never seen a child try to fix it this way. "Harrison, so do you know what's in here?" Sophie, "Yes. There are houses. Houses with lots of windows, so the sun can come in and play. And there are trees that grow on the roofs too. Mommy says grown-ups need green trees to breathe." Harrison, raising an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Is that so? I thought grown-ups needed money to breathe." Sophie, tilting her head, thinking seriously. "Money can buy chicken, but it can't buy sunshine. That's what my mommy says." The innocent reply made Harrison let out a rare, genuine chuckle. He looked out the window at the glass and steel skyscrapers he had built, all reaching for the sky. They had sunlight, but did they have happiness? "Harrison, your mother sounds like a very interesting person. Why does she have to work so hard?" he asked, his voice more a self-reflection than a question for the girl, Sophie. "Because of me," she answered immediately, without hesitation. "Mommy says she has to work so I can go to school and have a warm bed. She draws houses during the day, but at night she sells flowers. I don't like it when she sells flowers." Harrison, "Why not?" Sophie, "Because she has to stand in the cold. Her hands are always freezing when she comes home, and she's always sad when the flowers wilt." She says every wilted flower is a smile that wasn't given. She looked directly into Harrison's eyes. Like the flower I gave you the other day. It sat on the cart all day. Nobody bought it. I saw you standing alone and your face was very sad. I thought you needed some of my mommy's sunshine. Harrison was silent. He glanced at the crystal vase on his desk. The white rose was dry, but he had kept it. He had thought it was just a random, cute gesture from a child. Now he understood its true meaning. It wasn't a flower from a random roadside. It was the most beautiful flower from a small flower cart. It was a piece of property, a piece of hope from a poor mother, given away selflessly by her daughter. Sophie, continuing, her voice a whisper. I heard Mommy on the phone. They wouldn't give her another chance. She cried. She said her dream was broken and that she would never get to build the warm hug house. Harrison, truly curious for the first time. What is a warm hug house? Sophie. It's the house in these drawings. Mommy said it's a special house where everyone will always feel safe and loved, just like when she hugs me. She said if she could build it, she would have lots of money. She wouldn't have to sell flowers anymore. She would take a day off on Sunday. She would take me to the park. She promised a long time ago. She finished her sentence, her big round eyes welling up with tears. She wasn't demanding, wasn't begging. She was simply stating the truth of her world, a truth seen through the crystal clear lens of a child. Harrison said nothing more. He stood up and walked over to Sophie. Thank you, Sophie. You brought me a very important interview. Now you can go home to your mom. I promise I will look at this dream very, very carefully. When the heavy office door closed behind the little girl, the familiar, luxurious silence returned. But this time it wasn't cold. It was filled with thought. Harrison walked to his desk, but didn't sit down. His hand unconsciously touched the dry white rose in the crystal vase. And then a memory came flooding back, as clear as if it had just happened. A few weeks ago, a gray London afternoon. Harrison had stormed out of his building after a disastrous meeting. He was barking at his assistant over the phone, the noisy traffic. The world around him was just a series of obstacles. Suddenly, a small figure ran across the street. It was a little black girl, holding a single white rose. She held the flower up to him. You look sad, sir. My mommy says flowers can hold a little bit of sunshine. This is for you. At the time, he saw it merely as a random, cute nuisance. He took the flower just to make her go away quickly. But now, remembering it, he finally understood its true meaning. He realized it all. That girl and the rose girl were one and the same. Their meeting was not random. It was fate. With a completely new emotion, he sat down and placed Clara's portfolio before him. It was no longer a job application. It was the testament of a mother's love and sacrifice, delivered by the hands of a child. He opened the first page, and another world opened up before him. Inside were not dry technical drawings. They were architectural works filled with soul. He saw a public library designed like a giant tree, where children could sit and read in nooks carved into the trunk. He saw a social housing project with rooftop gardens for residents to grow vegetables together, where neighbors could connect. He saw a children's hospital with hallways painted like an enchanted forest to ease the fears of young patients. Each design was accompanied by a handwritten note from Clara. Architecture is not about creating space, it's about creating feeling. A house must be a place of healing. A city must know how to breathe. And then he saw her design for the Greenhaven project. It was completely different. Instead of maximizing sellable area, She maximized green space. Instead of uniform blocks, she created unique residential clusters, each with its own square and garden. The heart of the project was a giant glass conservatory, a community botanical garden where she noted, "A place to cultivate hope." Clara's designs were modern, elegant, and most importantly, they had a heart, the very thing his concrete empire was lacking. He suddenly realized he had been looking for a genius architect, but what he really needed was an architect with a soul. Mr. Davenport picked up the phone and dialed Clara's number himself. Clara, having just taken her medicine and dozed off, was startled awake by the ring. Seeing the unknown number, her heart pounded. She was terrified her daughter had gotten into trouble. "Hello? Ms. Clara?" The powerful voice, now with a new warmth, came through the line. "This is Harrison Davenport. I hope I'm not disturbing your rest." "Oh, Mr. Davenport, I'm so sorry about my daughter," Clara stammered. "No, Miss Clara," Harrison interrupted. "On the contrary, I must thank her. Sophie gave me the most effective interview I've had in years." He paused for a moment. "I've reviewed your portfolio. I've reviewed it very carefully." Clara held her breath. "Other architects bring me buildings. You brought me homes, warm hugs. I don't just want to hire you as the lead architect. I want you to have full creative control over the Greenhaven project. Scrap the old design. Build it according to your vision." Clara was stunned. Tears began to stream down her face, but this time, they were tears of happiness. "And Ms. Clara," Harrison added, a slight smile in his voice, "make sure there's a beautiful park in that project. Your daughter and I are very much looking forward to a Sunday there." Act 3, The Blueprint of a Life. A week after that fateful phone call, Clara, now fully recovered, walked into Davenport Tower. This time, she wasn't an anonymous applicant, but an essential partner. She wore a simple but elegant business dress, her hair tied back neatly, radiating a quiet confidence. Inside, however, her heart was still racing. Everything had happened so fast, so miraculously. Mr. Harrison Davenport was already waiting for her in the lobby. He wasn't wearing his usual power suit, but a simple dress shirt and trousers. He looked more approachable. "Welcome, Ms. Clara," he smiled, a real smile. "Ready to start building your dream?" He gave her a tour of the office. It was a modern, light-filled workspace with a private office that had a stunning view of the entire city, her new office. Harrison introduced her to the project's team of elite architects and engineers. Initially, they looked at her with a hint of skepticism. They couldn't understand why a £100 million project was being handed to a virtually unknown architect. That skepticism vanished during the first meeting. Clara didn't present with numbers or profit charts. She presented with stories. She spoke of the importance of a balcony wide enough for a child to grow a small plant. She spoke of a park bench placed just right for an old couple to watch the sunset. She spoke of sustainable building materials and spaces designed to encourage human interaction. She turned dry technical drawings into a poem about life. Harrison's team, accustomed to building concrete blocks, were for the first time inspired to build a home. They looked at her with genuine respect and admiration. Harrison sat at the end of the table, observing quietly. He knew he had made the right bet. The following months were a whirlwind of passionate work. Clara was like a fish in water. She poured all her heart and talent into the Greenhaven project. During the day, she was on the construction site, wearing a hard hat, discussing with engineers and construction workers. She didn't just sit in the office. She walked every corner of the site, feeling every brick, every breeze. She solved complex technical problems with creative solutions no one had thought of. In the evenings, her office became a creative studio. She and Harrison often worked late together. Their relationship gradually changed. They were no longer just partners. They became confidants. He shared with her his loneliness since his wife passed away, the pressures of being at the pinnacle of power. She told him about her years of struggle, her love for Sophie, and for white roses. They found a kinship in each other. They were both people who had lost the great love of their lives, and both were trying to build something to fill the void. For him, it was an empire. For her, it was a future for her daughter. Sophie also became an integral part of the project. After school, she would often come to her mother's office. She was no longer timid, but ran around cheerfully. She became the junior architect, giving Harrison advice on what color the playground slide should be, or what flowers should be planted in the garden to attract butterflies. Harrison, a man who had never truly spent time with a child, found immense joy in Sophie's company. She taught him how to laugh again. Tense meetings would often end with him and Sophie playing a game of chess or drawing together. The employees at Davenport Creations had never seen their CEO in such casual, warm moments. The Greenhaven project wasn't just a building. It was slowly healing all three of them. Epilogue: the inauguration of Blueprint for Life. 5 years later, a beautiful, sunny day in London. The inauguration ceremony for the Greenhaven eco-urban area was being held with great fanfare. The project was now complete, a green jewel in the heart of the city. The buildings had soft architectural lines, enveloped by lush greenery. The rooftop gardens were vibrant with flowers. The central square was filled with the laughter of children. It wasn't just beautiful, it was alive. Clara, now one of the most famous and influential architects in Europe, stood on the stage. She was no longer the timid flower vendor. She was a powerful, confident woman in an elegant dress, her hair in a neat bun, her eyes shining. She spoke of her journey, of her architectural philosophy. She spoke of building spaces that heal and connect. At the end of her speech, she looked down at the audience. But this project would never have become a reality without a brave heart and a pure faith. It was built not just with bricks and mortar, but with the love of a little girl for her mother. She looked towards Harrison and Sophie. Mr. Davenport, once so cold, was now smiling warmly. He wore a light-colored suit and looked years younger. Beside him was Sophie, now a beautiful and intelligent 13-year-old, her eyes still as clear as ever. When Clara came down from the stage, Harrison stepped forward and took her hand naturally. Sophie ran up and hugged them both. "You're the best, Mom," Sophie whispered. Harrison looked at them both, then said to Clara, "You were right. A real home is a warm hug." Sophie mischievously presented a single white rose she had hidden behind her back. "This is for both of you," she said. "For Mommy's dream and for your smile, Harrison." Harrison and Clara looked at each other, and then they both laughed, a laugh of complete, content happiness. They stood there, under the sun, in the middle of the world they had created together. No longer just partners, no longer just lonely individuals. They were a family built from a mother's most beautiful blueprint, a blueprint of love, empathy, and a single white rose.